Ministers from 4 provinces are in Saskatoon today to prepare for the next stage of their fight against the federal carbon tax. After losing its challenge at the provincial level, Saskatchewan is taking its case to the Supreme Court this December. Ontario, Alberta and New Brunswick are all interveners in that case. Doug Schweitzer is Alberta's Minister of Justice and Solicitor General. He joins us now from Saskatoon. Hi, Minister Schweitzer. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
So, Minister, tell me a bit about what the point of meeting with other justice ministers is. What kind of coordination was decided on?
Well, this is really important given the timing that we have here. We've just launched our constitutional challenge in Alberta. We're going to be filing our materials this week, detailed affidavit evidence along with our brief. That's important to make sure we coordinate with our allies in this in the fight against the carbon tax. We're also going to be intervening in Saskatchewan's case. And if Ontario is going to be bringing it forward as well, we're hoping to see if we can bring these forward at the same time to the Supreme Court.
What's the point of launching your province's own challenge if Saskatchewan has already lost its and is going on to an appeal with the Supreme Court? Why not just seek intervener status there and leave it at that?
Well, the biggest thing that we can do, we need to get Alberta's evidence in front of the court. We are filing detailed evidence regarding the long history Alberta has. Alberta for decades has regulated greenhouse gas emissions. We are the best in the world at doing what we do. We're responsible developers of our oil and gas resources. We want to make sure we get that evidence in front of the court because it's the provinces. The provinces are the ones that are best situated to make sure that we deal with this head on.
What does that have to do, sorry to interrupt, but Minister, what does that have to do with the constitutional division of powers?
Well, it's important, though, from a factual context. This is why it's properly delegated to the provinces. The courts need to see the context. The economic drivers of Alberta are very different than New Brunswick, which are very different than Quebec and Ontario. And we take a look as well, it's really important to note as well that Quebec now is going to be intervening at the Supreme Court. Even though the federal Trudeaus have blessed the Quebec plan, it's important to note that they're saying that's provincial jurisdiction. That's our case to be brought. We're aligned in that. Alberta now as well is standing up with all of our allies across this country to make sure we stand up to this federal overreach.
Yeah, I take your point on Quebec, and they're worried about overreach as well. It's a jurisdictional issue for them. I'm wondering, though, you're saying that specifically that Alberta's factual case needs to be presented, the depth to which that industry matters to the province. Well, how is that any different than Saskatchewan? It's a resource-based economy there too, and they still lost their case.
Well, you know what? Split decision again. I mean, you put 2 lawyers in a room, you'll get 10 different opinions. One of the things
to be fair, I mean, in any case, in any court case, if it's decided that someone wins and someone loses, it's not often that you then refer to it as a split decision. I mean, that was a decision. Now it has to go on to appeal.
Oh no, but remember, in Alberta, we're not the cases and decisions of Saskatchewan and Ontario are not binding in Alberta. Right now, we're making sure we bring forward Alberta's case. We need to make sure we get in front of our court our full legal argument, our full fact scenario, so Alberta's court can hear and make a decision on that. We're moving that forward in an expedited manner. We're hoping to have that heard before the new year, and hopefully that those reasons and those decisions can be brought in at the same time for the Supreme Court challenge.
I guess I just want to be clear on what it is that Alberta, what sort of different legal argument Alberta will present that will make your case more plausible than the one Saskatchewan just lost.
You know, similar legal issues are going to be raised at the provincial level here in Alberta. Our legal team is going to be filing our brief on Friday. I don't want to preempt our legal team on that. Remember, too, what we're seeing here, potentially seeing that the federal government wants to do, they want to amend our constitution effectively under POG. This is complete overreach. We're going to be making sure we bring the best case forward on behalf of Albertans. Our premier is committed to making sure Alberta uses every tool possible to fight back against this federal overreach. That means we're supporting Saskatchewan, we're supporting Ontario, and it's critical that we bring forward our own case in Alberta as well.
So just dealing with a hypothetical, say that the Conservatives do win the Alberta election. If Andrew Scheer says, I'm going to revoke the federal carbon tax, does that mean that everyone just drops their case?
This is one of the reasons why we came together today in Saskatchewan. It's my understanding that Saskatchewan would still pursue its case and want to have clarity as to what the divisions of power are. We would want to make sure we sit down with a new government in that situation to see exactly what their plans are. But I don't want to kind of get into the hypothetical situation, but I do believe that case will proceed.
What happens if the court, and I'm by no means a legal expert, but what happens if the court ultimately decides that the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction here? And then Alberta hopes that the federal government does have jurisdiction to build a pipeline and supersede provincial jurisdiction in other areas. I mean, can the two be congruent? Because again, I'm not a legal expert, but on the face of it, it sounds like Alberta is saying we want you to have jurisdiction so you can put a pipeline through Quebec if necessary. We don't want you to have jurisdiction when it comes to regulating our resources and GHG emissions.
Those are separate constitutional legal issues. I mean, one is getting a pipeline built across provinces. The other one here is dealing with clear provincial jurisdiction with respect to the energy industry. I understand the political argument that you're making, and that's one of the reasons why our government in Alberta is strong advocates to have a change in Ottawa. I mean, we've been very clear about that we think that we need a change of government this fall, and we're backing Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives.
How much is your government spending on this fight against the federal carbon tax, and is it the best use of taxpayer money?
This is critical. This was one of the top issues in the last election campaign in Alberta. We got bill number 1 for us was the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. That was promise made, promise kept to Albertans. We're making sure we use every tool possible to fight for the future of our province, make sure we protect our jurisdiction in Alberta. It's critical, though, to make sure that we can develop our resources in a responsible way. Alberta's the best in the world at doing this, and we're not going to be apologetic about it.
With respect, though, that didn't answer the question, how much are you spending of Albertans' taxpayer money to do so?
On that, the estimate for our legal fees is about $300,000 for this.
And do you think that's the most effective means of spending that kind of money?
When you look at the number of Albertans that lost their jobs over the last 4 years and the future of the oil and gas industry, I think that is a money well spent for the future of our province.
How do you know that that's why they lost their jobs, though? How do you know? I mean, is it because the NDP government at the time and the federal government brought in a carbon tax? Like, how can you necessarily say that one causes the other?
You know what? Last election campaign, which just happened in mid-April, I door knocked my constituency day after day, and I heard it from people at the doors every single day, people that had lost their jobs, been looking for work for 2 years. These are well-educated Albertans, and they're upset with their federal government and the rules that they've put in place. They want to make sure that our province stands up and fights for them and their future. So that's what we're doing here, making sure that we use every tool possible to fight for the future of Alberta.
If the worry is, though, how much the federal government's plan is going to cost people, I mean, they are rebating by law 90% of the money that they take in. Is it disingenuous to present it as a financial argument to say that the federal government is wasting your money on this? I mean, they are rebating 90% of that money.
I'm a restructuring lawyer. One of the reasons why I decided to run was I saw time after time after time investment fleeing Alberta. Viable companies, viable jobs were leaving our province, going to more favorable jurisdictions south of the border. Alberta has been and will continue to be a responsible developer of oil and gas resources. We need to make sure we stand up for our jurisdiction, make sure we stand up for those jobs in our province, and we will not be apologetic. We will use every tool possible to fight in the courts, to make sure we fight in the political realm as well, to make sure we stand up for our province and our jurisdiction.
Again, though, how do you know that there is a causation there? How do you know because there is a carbon tax that I mean, there were a lot of other factors at play there, including the price of oil.
You'll take a look. I mean, we've seen initial numbers coming back in regarding the Alberta economy. We've repealed the carbon tax. We've set a different tone for our province as to how we're going to conduct ourselves. And some of the early indicators have been really positive and encouraging. I've dealt a lot with the financial industry, and the feedback that we're getting from people on the ground is that Alberta's back on the map as a place to do business and invest.
All right, I'm out of time, Minister Schweitzer, but I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Minister. That's Alberta Justice Minister Doug Schweitzer. Tiffany, Françoise, and Tim are back with the Power Panel to break it down. Françoise, I'll start with you. You're the lawyer here. So I interviewed Minister Schweitzer, and again, please help me fact check this, but the argument he seems to be putting forward is, I asked, why not just intervene in the Saskatchewan appeal? Why bring forward your own case? And he says that Alberta has its own set of facts to present that they believe will differentiate themselves from other decisions. Is there anything Alberta can say that makes the constitutional considerations different?
Well, maybe not the legality of it all, but to set all the facts in front of a court, I think they have a good point there. They do need to bring their own specificity, the same way Quebec is intervening, to not say that they're against the tax necessarily, but that they are for provinces having full autonomy. So each provinces have their own little point on the matter. So I get that. The fact that they're going straight to the Alberta Court of Appeal is also a good thing. And the strength of being all put together, all the provinces, there's one fundamental principle in law, is that you always try to avoid conflicting judgments, which would mean that maybe, let's say, Alberta Court of Appeal would side with the government. We need to have one set of legal rules, let's put it that way, so because we're all supposed to be treated the same way under the law. So it's a good thing if they want to. It's going to cost a lot of dough. And that being said, to avoid having multiple trials or hearings that are all on the same type of questions, constitutional questions. I think that's a good thing. But they need to bring down in front of Supreme Court. You don't lay down facts. The facts are brought there, and they decide in law. So they need to do that step soon.
Can we go back to the Prime Minister's speech for a minute? It's interesting that Canada now ends at the Bay of Fundy, by the way, and why he didn't talk about Newfoundland and Labrador, where he has all MPs.
Sensitive
hey, Newfoundland,
issue.
I wear this jacket for you. It's my fishing jacket today. But where he has 7 MPs and a Liberal Premier, they aren't big. The Premier and the people of the province mostly are not big fans of carbon taxation. As you know, they do not support or did not support Bill C-69.
They don't like Bill C-69.
B-69. So interesting that he pushed that away and didn't bring that brush out as well, because it's not just Conservative premiers that are against this. It is just Conservative premiers or governments that are taking the matter to court. The politics of this is interesting from the Conservative side. So if you're the provinces, you're doing this for 2 reasons. One is immediate public opinion. Most of those governments, Alberta, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan, got elected or had just been elected when it became popular to oppose carbon taxation. So it's immediately politically popular. And for the future, you don't want to be known as the government that increased the cost of things for people. I won't use the Conservative rhetoric that says the cost of everything. So they're protecting themselves now and in the future. You heard Schweitzer say, and there may be some people who don't agree with him, that they're only paying $300,000 in legal fees. They'll take that because I'm sure most public opinion polling shows that this is a fight worth taking. I mean, I have that quick New Brunswick example. Was there 2 months ago, asked a cab driver about a flood and how it was going. Oh, he said, it's all fine now. And then he said to me, you know what, it's never going to flood again here. And I stupidly said, why? He said, because of the carbon tax. That is so ingrained in the political rhetoric of so many people in these provinces. This is allowing these provinces to push.
It's a bit disingenuous, right?
Of course,
because there's
people aren't disingenuous in political rhetoric.
But I mean, you're getting the money back. You're getting it rebated, 90% of it. I don't think that covers everything. The cost of living does go up a bit, but so does whatever any climate policy pursued by a government, whether it be a carbon tax or otherwise, eventually has a cost to it.
Of course, but it takes a lot more to say what you just said than the carbon tax is the great Satan of our time, which is the rhetoric that's often employed.
Yeah, no, good point. Tiffany, what do you think?
Listen, I'm glad they're collaborating. I just wish that they could come together around the actual challenge here, which is figuring out how we're going to answer our needs on climate change. And so I know at this point, and to Francois's point, perhaps consolidating and working together and sharing their legal expertise is saving some amount of money. But at the same time, my understanding and my feeling is that Canadians are going to lose, first of all, those that are and have been maybe following along on this. They're going to start to lose patience with this idea of fighting and having governments fighting each other, and at the end of the day, the cost coming back to taxpayers on those legal fights. And so I think they've already lost 2 court challenges.
Do the Liberals bear some of that too, though? Because it doesn't look like from that clip, it's not like Justin Trudeau is saying, let's never fight.
I think he's allowing Canadians, he's telling a story. So there's a story that is playing out already in front of us. We saw the court challenge from its beginning, and I think he's reminding Canadians of what happens when we end up electing someone without that thought process to what they're likely to do. And so I think it's definitely bringing together 2 stories, but I think his is in response.
In the same way
to
I was saying, though, that the Conservatives are being disingenuous to a certain degree, aren't the Liberals as well? It's not like their plan is getting, it's not, I mean, they're saying that they're the only ones who are leading, but that plan is not, we're not meeting our targets.
Exactly.
And those
so
targets are criticized for being too weak,
to give to nobody. But basically what he's saying, and that's why I think the court case is important. I'm not saying the provinces are right, but it'll be interesting to see what is the extent of the power of the federal government, who again is acting like the father on top of all of his children and forcing them to do his way or the highway. And so far from what I heard from the commissioner on environment, They're not going to meet their goals. They're not. So who's
But
to
what
say
would
that
happen
their
if there
plan
was
is
no federal?
But who are they to say that some provinces have no plan?
Yeah,
I felt insulted as a Quebecer when he said, "You guys in BC," and he's saying
likes your
no
plan in
wedge
Quebec.
politics. He didn't say it. Have
He
you
has
heard
in the
it?
past, though. The Quebec doesn't have a
he
federal
said
carbon
the
tax.
people of BC understands it, meaning all the others in Canada. But at the same time, he says in the same breath, we will not do wedge politics. That will not be our way. I'm thinking, hey, you just insulted me in my province who've been doing so much
But it's even
more.
simpler than that, to Tiffany's point. Canadians aren't going to tire of this. They haven't tired of it since Confederation. The message that the provinces are driving is, and it's an age-old one, Ottawa's screwing us over on a plan we don't want. National Energy Program, offshore oil, all of these fights have been around the same thing. It works in the provinces because that's how they feel, and people feel that it's real. So the Prime Minister equally has to be careful, to Francois' point, when he's lecturing. That always gets him in trouble because he misreads the mood in provinces.
But to Tiffany's point, aren't there a lot of people who do also want to see strong action on climate change?
of
It will resonate with
Of
them.
course they
still
will,
not
but
enough.
there's lots of polling that shows they don't want to hear the Conservative message or the Trudeau message. They want these groups to get together in the middle and talk about managed transition with achievable goals, not targets that are never going to be met or industries that are going to die before their time.
Tiffany, when's that going to happen?
Well, I would say at this point, sooner with the team that we have in place.
Oh, interesting.
Ooh.
Francoise?
Oh, boy, never.
I mean, it
don't
can
know.
happen.
I hope.
I think we're closer to it, but it's not going to happen just by fiat by one particular government. People are actually going to have to agree and work together.
The other interesting thing I thought was, and I just have a minute left, but that he said that Saskatchewan doesn't plan to drop its appeal even if Andrew Scheer wins, because they want to have that sort of very specific ruling on jurisdiction, which could probably have effects outside of just the carbon tax
Definitely,
issue. I don't know
and
what you think.
for different issues that might come up in the future on how they will operate the pipeline, on how
Yes,
they will
exactly.
do a lot of things. And I think that's when my own province, Quebec, decided to enter it, because there's a lot of things coming through. And we've got a government, we haven't talked about it, but who's kind of going on the side of not being on their own jurisdiction with municipalities, infrastructure. There's a lot of billions in that bank that will come out, and how it's going to come out. So this decision might be a real important one for the future and the way Canada operates.
All right, I've got to leave it there. Thank you so much to the Power panel this evening. Thanks to Tiffany Gooch, Tim Powers, and Françoise Boivin. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.